Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of It Ain't Weak to Speak. My name is Sam Webb, and this show is dedicated to ending the stigma around mental health through community, connection, and the hard-hitting truth. I'll be speaking with guests from all over the world about life to inspire and to educate people to speak up so that we can save more lives. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I've been told this man is sitting on a beach somewhere down in Costa Rica, and it looks like he's absolutely there doing exactly that, living the dream. Myles, welcome onto the podcast today, buddy. How have you been? What has been happening?
Man, thank you so much. It's so good to be here. I'm doing really well, despite all the global pandemic stuff. Just trying to quarantine myself here on a beach, which is quite the fortunate place to be quarantined. And other than that, man, I'm just running my business from the internet and helping people identify and dissolve the barriers that prevent them from living the life and having the love that they deserve.
I love that, mate. And I know you and I connected some time ago out here in LA through a friend of yours. Just so my listeners can get an idea of who you are and how we've come in touch with one another. Are you able to share that little journey and how that all sort of unfolded?
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I met through a mutual friend named Rachel Roller. Shout out Rolling with the Homies on Instagram. And she had been following you and was a good friend of mine as well. And she was just like, hey man, Myles, you got to meet this guy, Sam. And you just moved to LA. I think he might be in LA, so you guys need to connect. So she sent like a message to me saying that. And then I reached out to you, said, hey man, what's going on? I love that you're doing, this work in the world. I'd love to learn more about it. And I'm here in LA and we should link up. And you responded and said,
I'd love to link up, man. Let's find out how we can support one another's ventures and spread good messages in the world. And here we are. You're in Costa Rica. I'm sitting here in LA from my apartment recording a very, very exciting episode with you. And this has been a long time coming, man. I'm looking forward to explain and share your journey, your story with our listeners so that we can help more people, let people know that it ain't weak to speak and that they should follow their dreams and everything else in between despite any hardships or challenges along the way. And that takes me on to, learning more about your journey. And I've always wanted to keep it, I guess, very raw in terms of when it comes the right time to share that, I want to hear it almost like I've never heard it before. And I feel like today is the best day for that to take place. So because I know that your move out to LA, you're not from Los Angeles.
Correct.
It was a move that you made from your hometown. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And I moved out to LA after my inner transformation started. So it was a long time coming. So, if you don't mind, I'll just go right into it.
Mate, please. Absolutely. Let's go. I want to hear it. Raw.
Yeah.
You got the fake filters. Unleash, mate. Unleash.
You know how I do. So my entire life, I had been seeking the approval of other people and trying to find my value as a man in society. And everything that I did was revolving around that. So that means I needed to get the best. I needed to have the best soccer skills on the team. I needed to be the best. I needed to sleep with the hottest women. I needed to drive the best car. I needed to have the perfect image. And so I was completely consumed with my own ego consciousness. And I didn't really realize how that didn't serve me up until I got into a relationship, when then being with her was like a reflection. And she showed me pieces of myself that I wasn't willing to accept or even admit. And so I was all about deflection and there's no way that's true. And I was just living in complete victim consciousness and ego consciousness and trying to preserve my identity at all costs.
What were some of those things that you deflected and ignored and maybe made excuses for that we're talking about here?
Usually it just comes down to radical responsibility for your own contribution to anything. Anything in any relationship is it takes two. So all relationship issues aren't just relationship issues. They're the projection of our own inner wounds onto other people. And so once you realize this, then you can start taking responsibility for your part. Now, in any argument, and in this relationship, we had plenty, I wouldn't take responsibility. I was not aware that I could possibly have contributed to something like this. That was how bad it was. So, granted, neither she or I were perfect. Of course, we're human. We had our flaws. We were both unaware of certain things at the time. But when she ended up breaking up with me, she had labeled me certain things. She had called me a narcissist, obsessive compulsive liar, manipulator, controlling, and a slew of other things. Now, throughout the relationship, whenever she was calling me that, I was just completely deflecting everything that she was saying. And finally, after she broke up with me, I was like, what if this is true? What if I've been this way my whole life? And it took that for me to start having some sort of self-inventory and self-reflection. Because prior to that, I don't think I'd ever self-reflected, really.
Why do you think that is the case as a man? I mean, how old were you at this time? How old were you at this age?
Yeah, I was like 26, 27.
And why do you think you never had any time to self-reflect, or maybe you didn't give yourself that permission to self-reflect and be more self-aware? What were the barriers holding you back, do you think, as a young man that might be able to relate to a lot of people listening right now?
It's a great question. I think it plays all the way back to your message. We didn't wait to speak, right? I thought if I didn't uphold this image of myself, then I would be considered weak. I would fall down the alpha totem pole. I wouldn't get the women that I desired. I wouldn't have the jobs I desired. I wouldn't succeed in life. And so right now, this whole masculine identity is all about success. It's all about striving to get something from it, right? And so we put on this mask of more masculinity so that we can get what we want, which is, hotter women, better, more money, more sex. And we think that that's what fulfills us in life. And as a culture and as a society, this is what most men fall into, this trap.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened to me.
And how bad was that trap for you? I mean, obviously you're in a relationship at the time. You're around 26 that you said. The girlfriend left you. Then you went on this transformational journey and looked from within and started asking yourself questions. And I guess it sounds like you were being really honest with yourself and vulnerable. Was it me? Maybe it was my fault. Maybe these were the things that I didn't explore. How bad did it get for you? And at what stage of this journey did you decide to go, okay, I'm going to make a difference. I'm not going to be a fuckboy anymore. I'm not going to be doing this stuff that I've been doing for most of my life. I'm really interested to hear that because, as a young man myself, I could probably relate to a lot of that. And I think there are a lot of men that are listening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, great questions. So after the breakup, I lost my identity in that relationship.
In what way though? Like what? So when you say you lose my identity in the relationship, like everything that you'd built up and worked towards was in that and in her. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it didn't start there, right? So it first started with my identity being about the perceived value that I had in society,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what kind of job I had, what kind of car I drove, what kind of girlfriend I had, how good I was at certain skills, and all of that. Now, so when I got into this relationship, it turned catastrophic because I realized that, I didn't realize until later, that I had avoidant attachment style and she had anxious attachment style, right? So any time that she got upset at me, which was very frequently, and she also had a lot of anger, I would run. And I ran, and then I would come back because my ego was like, you know what, probably not going to get anything better. She is what completes my ego image, and I need to be here with her. So I would come back, and on the third time I did that, I broke up with her. I went to California for a little bit. I always had an idea of where I wanted to live in the world. That was California. So I broke up with her, went there, did some crazy medicine called Cambo, which is like frog venom that you like lather over open wounds, that people burn you with incense. And I cleansed myself spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And I had set an intention before doing that I wanted to release this woman out of my life. But after doing this cleanse, I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to be the man that she has always wanted me to be. Now, that in itself is also very tricky. It's a very sticky situation for men to want to be the man that she wants you to be. And I'll explain that in a little bit. So I came back to the relationship. She decided she'll give it a go. But during this whole time, she wanted nothing to do with me. And so I was trying so desperately to earn her love and approval. She ended up becoming a stripper. She ended up starting to drink alcohol a lot, and that was causing a lot of problems in our relationship. So I stopped drinking in order to make sure that she had a good example. She ended up cheating on me twice, and both times I took her back because I still felt guilty about leaving her. And I was abandoning myself at this point because of the treatment that I was receiving, no matter which way you justify that treatment. So at the time, I was making myself guilty for leaving her and then accepting all of this treatment that I was getting. And because of that, now my old identity vanished because I was creating a new identity with this person and trying to become the man that she wanted me to be. Now, for any man listening, as you become a man for somebody else, you're compromising the sum total of your own masculinity. You're compromising what makes you who you are. And as you start to make decisions for your woman's approval, over time, you're going to start losing her respect because you're not making decisions for yourself and becoming the leader of your own life. You're making decisions simply for everyone else but you.
It's a fine line, mate. It really is. Like listening to that, I mean, I get that. And then it sounds like it's when we talk about traditional ways of masculinity and being the leader and being the one that's strong and the dominant one and everything else in between, it sounds like to me that what you're saying is that it's almost like it's a double-edged sword to some degree. Like what you're saying is you still have to be in charge. You still have to be the leader. You still have to be the strong one. But is there room for vulnerability? Is that what you're saying?
There's always room for vulnerability. What I'm just saying really though is you have to identify what makes you your own person, and you can't compromise that. That's what you put boundaries around. And as long as you have this, then you can always remain yourself and not lose yourself in relationships. But if you're always abandoning yourself to earn the love and approval of someone else, then you're not going to have anything left of yourself.
Yeah, it'd be like
How can you ever be right?
Like
How could you ever be the man in any relationship and be a solid support system for anybody else if you're not even supporting yourself?
Yeah. Okay. So what it is you're saying is always be honest with yourself, take care of yourself, and be you as best as you can, no matter what the circumstances may be. And then let that shine through in your relationships, whoever it is with, because that's what's going to last. Is that basically what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah. Right.
If you make the relationship or the other person your sole priority, you're going to lose yourself. But that person is not going to benefit from being in a relationship with you if you don't know who you are anymore. So you have to have a firm foundation of your own person.
So yeah, and I certainly agree with that. I mean, within your journey and the context of your being and what you had to go through to experience this change and this understanding, how far did it get for you to be able to sort of, in your terms, please other people, be there for other people, change to suit the woman or the partner, whoever it is you're with? Did you realize, shit, I've got to actually start looking after myself because I'm falling down the rabbit hole? And what effect did that have on Myles in his personal life?
See, I didn't realize I was falling down the rabbit hole until I got broken up with in the way that it happened. It's kind of like Plato's allegory of the cave. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. Please enlighten me.
Sure. Uh, Essentially, Plato created this allegory, and it says that there were these men in a cave. And because they were in the cave, they had no idea about the rest of the world. And so when they left the cave, then they were like, you know what, this is weird. I'm going to go back into the cave. And essentially, that's kind of what happened with me in society. Whatever group I was in, I found a way to like become one of them in order to fit in. So I was also getting like the feedback from that group, the positive feedback loop. So once I fit in, like a lot of the groups I was in was heavily involved in drinking, partying, sex, those kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And none of the stuff I did was bad, or I didn't even have to reflect on it because I was in a cave with a lot of other people doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't really aware. It wouldn't allow you to be aware because you didn't have time to be around that change that you were so desperately trying to seek.
Yeah. There's no need to change because I was getting positive feedback for all my actions.
Yeah. And that's because of the people that you're surrounding yourself with.
Right.
Is a big part of the influence that we seek in life. I guess they don't say it for no reason. You become like the people that you spend most of your time around. And if you're always around people that are making you feel like that, it's almost normal, you don't ever start to question it because it's just something that you're so used to every single day of your life. And you think that it's normal and that it's justified. It's okay to do that. It's okay to be like that. And that's just the way life is. But until you find a wake up moment that shakes you so hard that you have no other choice but to try and find out what's actually happening, and you start questioning the very things that you're so used to, that's when it starts shifting, I guess, by the sounds of it. And that's certainly what's happened to me in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Right on.
So what, mate, talk to me really quickly, because I feel the relationship stuff is certainly something that it's one of these survival instincts in life that people are always seeking a relationship, whether it's a love interest, whether it's a friendship or whatever it is. Relationships in life are very important in one way or another. What's some advice that you can give to someone right now who's having a very hard time in a relationship, whether it is a love interest or whether it is just a friendship or whatever it is? What, as someone from lived experience, your own journey is one of many people's journeys and it's unique to you. What is some advice that some of our listeners can take and say, this is really good stuff. I'm going to go and do some different work, or I'm going to do inner work. I'm going to explore and all that sort of cool stuff. Where do they start and what do they do?
Such a great question. I think it's really individualized, but I think there's a pattern here. And most of my clients and the people that I work with, when we realize where our relationship issues stem from, it always, after you peel back all the layers, comes down to self-worth. And there's some unconscious belief there that we are not worthy of the love that we crave, and therefore we abandon ourselves in order to earn it. And once you realize this, you'll realize how we project these beliefs about ourselves onto our partners. And if we don't heal them, we recycle the same experiences with every new partner that we have. So then the inner work needs to start. And the inner work needs to really uproot that core belief around why you think you're not worthy. And that's a very unconscious belief. And a lot of people would say, you know what, I think I am worthy. But that's the conscious ego speaking versus the unconscious truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it takes some work to identify what your unconscious beliefs are. And then as you make your unconscious conscious, which is called shadow work, and I wouldn't recommend doing shadow work first. But that's kind of where all the work really lies, is within the shadow.
Okay. So on that very point, which I'm very interested around the, self-worth, self-love, all that sort of cool stuff that I think everyone needs more of, especially this day and age. And they need to identify more of their own lives with that, both unconscious and consciously. What are some strategies, without looking into the shadow work that we're talking about really quickly here? What are some strategies or techniques or things that people can practice? Anybody can practice day to day to sort of increase their own self-worth.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so self-worth is a really big topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so briefly, I'm going to go ahead and break it down both like on a spiritual level and on a mental level, because I think a lot of people need both. A lot of people, like, you may hear that you are worthy simply because you exist, right?
All the time, man. We hear that all the time across social media. You're breathing. You are worthy. You are enough. You are more enough just as you are. You don't have to be successful. You don't have to be a professional athlete. You don't have to have billions of dollars in the bank. You don't have to have started a social impact organization that's saving, lives all over the world. You're enough just as you are. And that doesn't make you more enough. We hear it all the time.
Yeah, but a lot of people can't believe it. That's a hard
No.
pill to swallow, because in the cave in which we live, Plato's allegory, the cave, your worth is determined by how much you produce, how much value you have relative to society in a capitalist economy, and all of that. So it becomes there's automatic cognitive dissonance and confusion. Like, well, how can I be worthy if I'm sitting at home meditating all day?
Mm-hmm.
So here's how we can understand what that really means on why you're worthy simply because you exist. And I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here that might be a little bit deep, but bear with me. We are all part of the same system. We are part of the whole. And in each part, we are also whole. Right? So we're part of the whole and whole in each part. We are all connected through the collective unconscious, or the universe, or God, however you call it. Okay? We are all mirrors that help each other become conscious. And the universe, or God, or the collective unconscious, in order to become aware of and actualize itself, it needed to fracture itself into these little parts, all of which are you, me, and everyone listening, and everyone else in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's doing this in order to become conscious of itself. Now, because of this, every single human who has life on this earth is serving the purpose of the collective to become aware of itself. Now, that is the reason why, on a spiritual level, you have worth. 1 minute here on this earth is serving a purpose of making the universe conscious of itself, which makes your life have meaning and value. Mm-hmm. 1 second, 1 millisecond is a gift beyond gifts. So now let's talk on a mental level, because for me, that was kind of a hard pill to swallow, because I am still a man in this earth school, and I'm trying to have a successful business. We need money to survive. We have to survive here, right? So what does that even mean, and how do you have worth here in this material, physical realm? And what that looks like is the belief. Now, you can have self-worth, but not feel self-worthy. And that means we have to uproot the belief about why we don't feel self-worthy. And you'll see in your actions, if you reflect, when you don't feel self-worthy, you stop keeping promises to yourself, stop going to the gym, stop eating healthy, you abandon yourself, you rely on other people to do everything for you, you have a victim conscious, a blame mentality on the world. You just stop. You stop making yourself important. You stop taking responsibility and ownership over your own life. And that's how you get your self-worthiness back mentally, and uproot the belief around that, is to continue making promises to yourself, set and enforce boundaries, know what it is that you're protecting. Really, when we're setting a boundary, you're protecting what you need in order to not abandon yourself again. So what that looks like for me is, I love playing soccer. I like having guys' nights. I love doing my work. And I love having family time. And so these are core areas of my life that I need to protect at all costs. I need my alone time. So I'll set boundaries around that to make sure that I get what I need to fill my cup, and everyone else in my life can benefit from the overflow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm protecting myself from abandoning parts of myself that are needed for me to feel self-worthy.
Okay.
That would be self-worthiness in a nutshell.
Mate, you articulated that extremely well. Thank you very much for that, because I feel that's something that will be able to resonate with people to their core. We're not talking surface level stuff here. It ain't weak to speak. The podcast itself isn't about talking about surface level stuff. We can talk about that on one or two levels, but I mean, overall, we want to talk deep. We want to get to people's core and change the way people are thinking, and give people strategies and tools and techniques in their own life to live better and live more and live happier, And I feel that you explain that, greatly, where you've said you can have self-worth, but you can't, or you don't feel self-worthy. I find that a very interesting approach to look at it. I've never thought of it that way. What about people who aren't in touch spiritually? I mean, I haven't done a lot of spiritual work, probably consciously I'm probably feel like I'm not, but unconsciously I probably am. But that being said, how do you have self-worth and I know you've explained it a little bit, but how can you have one and not the other? Is there an example in your life where you've had self-worth, but you've felt worthless? You felt like you're not enough. You felt like you're not doing enough. You're not contributing enough to society. You feel like you're not adding more value back than what you should be. Is there been an example in your life that might be able to resonate with people?
Yeah. So unconsciously, we all have self-worth simply because we exist.
Mm-hmm.
We are all part of the whole, and each part we are whole. Mm-hmm. And so we all have value to the collective unconscious, the universe, God, becoming aware of itself and experiencing itself through us. Now, we might not know that on a spiritual level or even on a conscious level, but that's what's happening in the background of all of our lives. And at the same time, we have this belief about ourselves while we're in this cave of society where we're not measuring up to the benchmark standard of success or beauty or whatever. I specifically had that most of my life. The whole reason that I was trying to achieve more value and have this greater and greater image about myself was because I didn't think I measured up. I would always be feeling lack. And I would never feel self-worthy until I got to the top. But that's a never-ending chase. You see a lot of CEOs these days. They get to the top, and then they kill themselves because they realize that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the biggest factors in mental health, in my opinion, is understanding where your worth is derived from. If you derive your worth from the external world, you're always going to be comparing yourself to the external world.
Totally, man. That's very well said.
You're never ever going to feel enough.
Yeah, and that you're always going to want more, and what you thought you set out to achieve was going to make you happy or fulfilled or on purpose or whatever you want to call it. You get there and you realize, holy hell, this isn't what I thought the feeling would have been. I don't feel the reward that I had in my mind. And too often people are always, working, striving so hard to get to these places and constantly feeling let down. And they're getting the wrong cues and signals, and then they're chasing other things. And then that comes at a cost with their relationships or their own life. They're working too much. They're not devoting enough time to the family. They're chasing these unattainable goals that they feel is going to bring fulfillment and purpose. And I'm hearing this a lot too. And most books that I read, it touches on this, and I feel like it's a really important topic because you've got like you mentioned it perfectly. Then you've got to feel all of these things within yourself first before you start even thinking about them coming from anywhere else externally. And the moment that you place, fulfillment and I'm going to raise $100 million or I'm going to save $50,000 this year and I'm going to feel fulfilled, or I've reached my target, you're going to then get to there and want more if you're placing your things externally. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've just spoken about.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a key to understanding how to do this, knowing that there's still more to do, right? Because we all have a purpose, we all have goals. We can't just kind of like sit back and be like, okay, I'm self-worthy, I don't need to do anything anymore, right? There's always more to do. And whether that's in your inner journey or whether that's in your business or whatever, internal or external, there's always more. So how do you find fulfillment in life knowing that there's always more to do?
Mm-hmm.
You have to become grateful for how far you've come. And you find the balance, not necessarily the balance, but the harmony between being a self-appreciating yourself for how far you've come and knowing that there's still more to do. And you can find the harmony here, allowing you to relax into the present moment and knowing that in this moment, you are enough and you've done enough, yet there's still more to do, and that's okay too.
Very powerful, man. So true. And it sounds so easy said than done, if people could practice this every single day, I think we'd live in a much happier place and people wouldn't be, stressing around and, sacrificing certain things in their life for nothing really.
Let me ask you a question. When you hear about doing gratitude journaling or whatever like that, what do you think most people are grateful for?
Being alive, breathing, having a roof over their head, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner when they're able to eat it, having hot water, having a shower. They're the things I feel grateful for.
Okay. And most of those things are external to you.
Mm-hmm.
What if we can also incorporate being grateful for things internal to you, which is what I call self-appreciation, which is also the number one secret that most self-development people are not teaching us. This is how you develop more self-worth. This is how you uproot the belief that you might not have value. We have to appreciate ourselves for how far we've come. So when you wake up, yes, continue to do those other gratitude exercises, but also include, wow, like I'm grateful for the fact that inherently, because I didn't have to do anything to achieve this, I have good intentions, which makes me a good person. And then external to yourself, like I'm appreciative of all the stuff that I've accomplished. And so you remind yourself every day how far you've come.
So what are some other things we could be grateful for internally? Obviously the external things they could vary from person to person for whatever they got going on in their life and what have you. But what are some other really clear examples that people could be more grateful for from within? Because I do feel like, and me included, most of my gratitudes and gratefuls are for the really basic things in life that we overlook, fresh air and, sunshine and little really basics, being alive. But how can we dive deeper in that and talk about self? What are some more examples that you can provide us with that maybe we can go away from this episode and, share with our networks and, start becoming more grateful from within before we start looking from the outside?
Absolutely. Great question. And
I
this is
think
a
it's
two-part
important.
answer. Yeah, this is going to be a two-part answer. So one, it becomes really difficult for us to identify things within ourselves inherently, things that we didn't have to achieve that are, that we love about ourselves, because we're still holding on to shame from the past. And we overlook a lot of the good things about ourselves because we're still holding on to shame from decisions that we've made from the past. And we have to release shame in order to really see a wider spectrum of who we really are. Shame is expecting yourself to have known what to do in that moment. Shame is projecting your current level of awareness onto your past self and holding your past self accountable for not knowing what to do in that moment and acting differently, making a better choice, and then beating ourselves up for not making the right choice. And we have to be able to forgive ourselves for not knowing better at the time. That's one, how you release shame. And then two, things about yourself that become a lot clearer once you release the shame is how good-hearted you are. Do you intend to hurt anybody? No. Sometimes we make choices that hurt people. And yes, our impact might not match our intention, but it doesn't change the fact that at your core, the core of who you are a good person. You might make crap decisions sometimes, but you're still a good person. Right? And so as we remember how the goodness of our being,
and the pure,
it's a lot easier to accept ourselves.
Yeah, I like that, man. I really like that. I love that perspective. I love that angle that we're looking at here, because it's one that, I've even probably overlooked many times in the past. So I appreciate you sharing that, because it's certainly going to go a long way. It's certainly in my life, I'll help practice that. And I think it's really important, to feel like we're honoring and showing up and being grateful for the things that are already happening from within, the things that we're working towards. The habits that we're taking in life, the rituals that we're doing to make us better humans, the choices that we're making to improve our own lives, whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, and everything else. I think it's really, really important that everyone has the power to be grateful for something that they're advancing in their life internally. And it doesn't always necessarily mean we have to look at the things that are happening externally to be grateful, like big deals happening at work, or relationship goals, or holiday destinations and success factors. I feel like that's just the byproduct of all the great work that happens from within. Do you agree with that?
100%. 100%. Once you realize that everything in your external world is a reflection of your internal world, then you start to realize that you've been your own problem all along. And that because you take responsibility for being the problem, then and only then can you become your own solution.
Can I ask you, Myles, as well, on this note, and within your journey, your story, your expertise now, when we're talking about this topic, what has been the hardest moment for you in your life?
So that's a great question. And that kind of brings us full circle back to my own personal story, where my ex-girlfriend broke up with me, cheated on me, found out she was pregnant like a few weeks later with not my kid, someone else's kid. And I was just devastated. And the only thing that I did not have my identity. I just had these labels that she had called me: narcissist, obsessive compulsive liar, manipulator, controlling, and a few other things. Now, what is a guy to do when he doesn't know who he is anymore, but thinks he's a narcissist? So my whole mentality, all my thoughts went to thinking how much of a piece of shit I am, and how I will never love or even be capable of loving or being loved by anyone else forever. My life is worthless now.
Wow.
And that's what happens when we start over-identifying with labels. Especially, like, I could go down a rabbit hole of over-identifying with your diagnoses too, and how harmful that is to our psyche.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll save that for another time. Essentially, in this moment, I went very dark. I isolated myself because I didn't think that I had any value in the world. The only person that I thought I was this piece of shit narcissist who couldn't tell the truth. And I believed everything she called me. I believed her over my own inner wisdom because I didn't have any inner wisdom at that time. I couldn't trust it. I had abandoned myself and forsaken myself. I did not have any self-trust. No feelings of self-worthiness. And so in that moment, I felt helpless, felt hopeless, and I felt worthless. I just had so in that moment, I just contemplated, for that phase of my life, I was thinking about suicide every day. And I even had this job. On top of this, I had moved back in with my mom. So I was like this 26, 27-year-old kid, supposed to have all this shit together, comparing myself to everyone else who's got their own apartments, and just rotting away in my mom's house. And then I had this job. I got this job, and I was so miserable through it all. I couldn't speak to people. I did not want. I couldn't communicate myself. I just felt so isolated. Nobody would ever understand me anyway. And my boss at the time joked with me because I was so quiet. He was like, "You're gonna come in here and shoot up the place one day, aren't you?" I was like, "That's awful. That's fucked up." And so I just went home every day, and I just melted into my bed. I did not want anything to do with the rest of the world because they wouldn't understand. And I trapped myself in this belief that it will never, ever, ever get better. That this is the way it is, and that's final. Because I had over-identified with a label that someone else had called me. And because identifying as a narcissist, there is no cure. There's no cure. So that's how it is. And so my life just went down. There was no point for my life anymore. There's no cure. There's no reason for me to be here. And it was like that for months. And one day, and I'm not even going to take credit for this, this happened all of a sudden. My mind went from, why is this happening to me? Why am I such a piece of crap? To, how can I be happy? How can I do something? What is here for me? What can I do about this? And just simply rephrasing that question gave me a new answer. The quality of your life is totally dependent on the quality of the questions that you ask yourself, which is why it's important to do the self-reflection. So these questions gave me new answers, and these new answers gave me new hope, new possibility. It totally shifted my perspective. Now, there was still some resistance between me thinking that there's some cure to narcissism or that I'll ever change. But I started reading a book. I read one page in a book every night. And I made that promise to myself, and I kept it. And that was the starting moment that snowballed the rest of my journey. Funny enough, I have an interview with the author of this book tomorrow. And I'm super excited.
Yeah, good. That's amazing, man. Congrats. So with this transformational journey, looking at and mate, firstly, let me rewind. Thank you very much for sharing that with all of us. I feel very grateful and honored to be on the other end of this discussion right now and sharing your insights and wisdoms with the rest of our audience and listeners and myself. So I'll be able to learn from that, no doubt. That being said, and congrats on, turning it all around and changing those, perspectives one day at a time, setting small promises to turn your life around, give yourself some meaning, and start identifying and labeling yourself with what you felt was true and correct at that time, especially through that journey, I think is so important. Not letting other people put a label on you and then believing that is the final label and you can't change it, I think is a very strong takeaway from this. So anyone else that might be struggling with that, please take note. Also, mate, so it got very dark. Obviously, you changed, some of your habits. You made little baby promises. You took baby steps. You started turning it all around. For those who don't understand narcissism, can you just quickly explain that for a lot of people?
They say narcissism is an uncurable condition that stems from your childhood where you were deemed super special and you're perfect, nothing's wrong with you, so you never take responsibility for anything. You become the victim of everyone else's behavior. You never can see yourself in other people's shoes. You have no empathy.
Mm-hmm. Lack compassion and things like that.
Yeah, and essentially you use other people for your own benefit.
Okay. And with this, and thank you for sharing that very succinctly. It was very clear. With this journey that you're currently on now and we're talking today, what are some of the biggest learnings that you've learned, comparing your old self, 26-year-old self to your current day self? What are some of the things you wish you had known at 26 or earlier that would have helped you out a lot then? What are some of the biggest takeaways that you could share with us? I'm going to call these ones the Myles' wisdoms.
Don't abandon yourself for the love to earn the love and approval of other people. And if you don't take responsibility for anything, you'll never see yourself as the solution. You'll never feel powerful enough to change things for yourself. Mm-hmm. So you always have to understand how you contributed to every situation in your life. I would also say that your beliefs about who you are not yours. Your beliefs about who you are the product of family, social, and cultural influence. And until you realize and unravel where your beliefs come from, you're going to be believing you are someone different than you really are. They say your thoughts create your reality. It's really your beliefs that create your reality. And if your beliefs stem from how you've been relating to the external environment, you created a sense of yourself based on the external, your belief system is not yours. Your reality is then created unconsciously by beliefs that were programmed into you by other people and how you related to the external world. That is one of the biggest pieces of creator consciousness that I could ever offer anybody.
Thank you, man. That's power. That is power. You heard that, guys. You heard it from the man himself. His mouth, Myles, has just shared his wisdoms with you. I find that extremely valuable, very powerful, and I think a lot of people will take a lot away from this episode, Myles. I do ask all my guests as well, before we wrap up most shows, what's your interpretation of It Ain't Weak to Speak? When you heard about it all and you saw the work that we were all up to, what was your interpretation? What's your interpretation of that?
This is really synonymous with one of my, the first messages that I ever had when I first started this journey. So I started sharing my story with other people and being vulnerable about it, because that actually gave them a sense of connection with me and they related with me. And I realized how powerful it was to be able to allow other people to heal through my story. There were so many other people out there that were needing someone else to express their story for them to feel validated enough to feel safe in whatever they were going through in that moment. So in essence, it's not just like, it's not just weak not to speak. It's the most courageous thing you can do. And it's one of the most healing things you can do for everyone.
Mm.
And vulnerability is a strength simply because it takes courage not to hide. And what you're doing when you're speaking is we are now recalibrating the system, because when we don't speak, it's because we fear that we're going to be met with rejection. But when we start learning that when we speak, our expression is met with connection rather than rejection, now it becomes safe to be ourselves. That's when the masks come down. That's when we are authentic. That's when intimacy is created. That's when connection and the human nature like really comes together as one.
Mate,
But
I
it doesn't
absolutely
happen.
love that.
Yeah.
So powerful, man. So powerful. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Myles, I'm very grateful for your time, man. I always am. It's always good connecting with you. I miss those weekly catch-ups here in LA at your place when we used to get together and talk and talk chop about life and, you know, plans and making bigger changes and differences in the world. Mate, I miss those times, but I'm sure you're doing them down there in Costa Rica, no doubt, on that beautiful island, living the dream. Enjoy the beach life for me, mate. That being said, where can our listeners follow you? I'm going to include everything in the show notes, guys. Also, after this episode, please join me in the Facebook group. You'll find that at livin.org's Facebook page. We're going to share tips and tricks, any insights that Myles can share with us, and we'll connect and talk about the show. Where can people find you, Myles?
Sam, wow, thank you so much for having me on, man. This has been such a pleasure and an honor and a privilege to be a part of your movement. For those listening, if you found some value in what I shared today, you can find me on Instagram at the Myles Scott. That's TheMylesScott. And I'm also on Twitter. I have a lot of posts on Twitter that are unreleased. So if you want to come check out over there, that's where some content is as well. Other than that, Instagram is my main platform, and I'll be there.
Doing some great work, guys. He's always been doing great work since I've met him, and I'm glad that I met him. Very valuable, honorable man doing great things in the world. I appreciate you as always, Myles, and I wish you nothing but the best on your journey to transformation, and not only yourself and continuing to work on your inner self, but also the lives that you're impacting as well along the way and the people that you're working with, mate. I find that very inspiring, and I think it's much needed in this world. So thank you. Keep it up, and remember, it ain't weak to speak. Thanks, man.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you, man. I love what you're doing here in this movement, the Live in org. I'm not sure if we're still recording here, but I just want you to know how much impact you have on the world, and I just love it. So let me know how I can support you in any way going forward.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, thank you, brother. Have a lovely day and keep living, my man.